Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Torah studies this week. Parshas Shoftim and Good Chodesh. Tonight is Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh Elul. It is the beginning, the month of Rachamim and Slichas, a month that we should really take advantage of. Every day in this month, the Rebbe tells us, is Melech Basada, the king is in the field. When the king is in the palace, not everyone can access the king. But sometimes the king comes out to the field and he's available and he smiles to everyone. And that's exactly what happens in the month of Elul. Every day Hashem sort of is in the field, is accessible, and helps us to be inspired and to elevate ourselves and to get ready for Rosh Hashanah, to get ready for a good year, for Gesundheit year. And that leads us to the topic of today's conversation, talking about getting inspired. Sometimes you have inspiration, but inspiration that doesn't last. Sometimes you come to a lecture, you go to a trip in the Holy Land, and you get inspired, and you can say, okay, that's it. I want to take this mitzvah, I want to do this, and time passes and it evaporates, and you ask yourself, was that inspiration real? Was it fake to begin with? If it's real, maybe it should last. So we're coming to the Parsha. We're going to find a very interesting insight that will shed some light on this topic. And this is one of the verses in the Parsha that talks about when we fight a war and we put a siege on the enemy city. We got to make sure not to cut the tree that bears fruit. And let's see it inside, and we'll see how the simple understanding of that verse, and then how the Talmud gives an interesting commentary on this verse. So here's the verses in this week's Torah portion. It says, when you besiege a city for many days to wage war against it, to conquer it, you shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them, for you may eat from them, but you shall not cut them down. For is the tree of the field a person to be besieged by you? This is how Rashi explains this verse. The Torah is saying, don't cut down the tree. Why? Because the Torah is basically asking a rhetorical question, saying, is the tree of the field a person that he has to be put a siege on it? Then the next verse, the Torah says, however, a tree that you know is not a fruit tree, you may destroy and cut down. And you shall build bulwarks against the city that makes war with you until you conquer it. And that is a simple law that the Torah says. It teaches us the laws when it comes to in the war. You should not cut down the trees. Only a tree that doesn't bear fruit you can cut down. By the way, this is a law in general. One is not allowed to cut down a fruit tree. It's a very big problem. It says even it's dangerous if we cut down a fruit tree. So we have to be careful. However, the Talmud gives us here a homiletic interpretation of these verses. So when the Talmud reads this verse, it says, Ki Adam eitz hasadeh, that a man, the way the simple reading of the verse is, Ki Adam eitz hasadeh, that a man is like a tree of the field. So we just explained that this is a rhetorical question. Is a man a tree of the field? But that's not how the Talmud reads it. The Talmud said as follows. What is the meaning of the verse? For is the tree of the field a person? Is a human being actually a tree of the field? That's the question the Talmud asks. So in other words, the Talmud reads this verse in the Torah like the Torah is saying that the man is like the tree of the field, and then asking the question, how could you say so? What does that mean? What does it mean that a man is like a tree of the field? Is a human being like a tree of the field? And then the Talmud comes with an answer, and it says as follows. The explanation is as follows. One verse says, "For you may eat from them, but you shall not cut them down." And the other verse says, you may destroy and cut down, like we just read. How so? How do you explain this contradiction, discrepancy? The Talmud says, if a Torah scholar is refined, you may eat from them, but you shall not cut them down. And if the scholar is not refined, you may destroy them and cut down. Basically saying, like it's a fruit tree, represents a Torah scholar that is refined, you should eat from them, meaning you should emulate them. If the Torah scholar is not refined, is a scholar but is not refined like a mensch, then don't eat them. You can destroy them, meaning separate yourself from them. You do not follow them, you do not emulate them. But here's the question. What exactly is the Talmud doing here? Number one, the Talmud makes the statement where the Torah says, like that the man is like the tree of the field. It takes this simple understanding of the verse, and then it asks the question, is a man like a tree of the field? So let me ask you, think about it for a minute. If I would ask you, if you see this kind of verse, that a man is like compared to a tree of the field, and I'll ask you to find what things can you find, what similarities can you find between a tree and a man and a human being? I'm sure you can come up with many things. You can say a tree grows, a man grows, a tree needs oxygen and water, a human being needs that. A tree bears fruit, a human being bears fruit. There's so many similarities that you can find between a man, a human being, and a tree. Here the Talmud is asking the question as if that's impossible. What similarities is there? And then it comes up with an explanation of a little, not something that we would think of, that it talks about a scholar, if the scholar's actions is refined or not refined. How does it come up with this thing? So this is the question. Why depart from the literal meaning of the verse only to settle on a obscure analogy about Torah scholars? What is the explanation of this Talmudic exchange? What exactly is the Talmud teaching us? And here we will come to the answer at the end. We'll explain what that means. Before we get to the explanation, we need to pick apart the difficulties with a little bit more, first a brief introduction. In Jewish thought, we talk about four types of elements in the world. You have domem, tzameach, chai, medaber. You have the element domem is the inanimate objects, rocks, water. Tzameach is things that grow. That's the second category. You have the chai, the animal world. And then you have medaber, the human beings. The Alter Rebbe explains this structure of these four categories. He says as follows. There is a popular idea about the notion of four categories. Medaber literally means one who speaks, which is human. Then number two is chai, animals. Then you have tzomeach, the plants, and domem, the lowest category. Domem is nothing more than what its name implies, an inanimate object, a rock, water, anything, minerals. The next category is tzomeach. Tzomeach possesses greater life energy than domem, which is why members of this category grow. Nevertheless, it possesses elements of domem as well. Within the vegetations, there is also the element of the inanimate, as the tree or plant is inherently an inanimate object. Okay, so you have the inanimate object that has also the additional power of growing. It is only because it has an additional quality over domem, the quality of growth, that it is called tzomeach. The next category, chai, the living, the category of the living animals. Within it, all the qualities of domem and tzomeach, the inanimate and the growing things, and in addition, the faculty of consciousness, desire, independent movement, etc. It is because of these additional faculties that it is called chai, meaning life. But it also retains all the elements of the lower levels. The creatures in the category of chai also have the faculty of growth, which is the primary characteristic of tzameach. They also contain inanimate objects such as bones. So you have in the animals you have all three others also. Similarly, the medaber, the human being, contains all the lower levels, but has the additional faculty of intellect and speech. Okay, so here we have all these categories. So which brings the question, which raises the question more, that here in the Torah, as we said before, the Torah says that the Adam, ki Adam etz hasadeh, he's a man like a tree of the field. But the Talmud takes it and says, no, Adam etz hasadeh, the man is compared to a tree. Why does the Talmud insist with comparing the man to the tree? This man is like this kind of tree, another man is another kind of tree. Why is that the Talmud doing this? The trees, sameach, are a lower life form than human beings, medaber. Why is the Talmud insistent on equating the two? So, having explained these four categories, there is something unique about the tzomeach. There is a quality about trees that we don't find in other things. And that is the fact that a tree is always connected to its source, always connected to its root, the source of life of the tree. The tree is always with roots in the ground, which is the life of the tree, the source of its life. In the animal world, you also have something similar, but not exactly the same. You have the fish in the ocean. You take out the fish of the ocean, take him out of the water, the fish dies. So the fish is also always in its source of life. There's the famous story in the Talmud about Rabbi Akiva and this other person. Rabbi Akiva risked his life teaching Torah in the time when the Romans forbade teaching Torah. He was eventually arrested. And this man, before he was arrested, the man told him, why are you risking your life? Why are you risking your life? You know they're going to arrest you. You're teaching Torah, they're going to arrest you and you die. So Rabbi Akiva told him the example of the fox and the fish. And the fox saw the fish in the water, and the fox says to the fish, why are you running away from all these fishermen? Come with me. I will protect you and everything will be okay. And the fish says to the fox, 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 they say you are the wisest of all animals. You're the foolest of them. You're so foolish. And it says, if in the source of my life I am afraid, how much more so will I be afraid if I am taken out of the source of life? You want me out of the water? For sure I will die. Rabbi Akiva told them that this is the metaphor that the Torah is my life. You want me to stop teaching Torah? Why? Because I might die? If I'm stopping learning Torah, stop taking the Torah, I'll for sure die, spiritually speaking. So this is something we find in the concept of so the fish is connected to its source of the water. So you see in an open way, in a revealed way, that is connected to the root, connected to its water. And the same thing is the tree. The tree is even more so connected. And there is an advantage in a disadvantage in being connected in a revealed way. We human beings God gave us a feeling of independence, feeling that we are existing independently of the source of our life, which is Hashem, God Himself. We don't see that. And this quality of being able to realize the source of our life is something we learn from the trees. So Tzameach is always visibly connected to its source of life. We, the Medaba, feel independent of our source of life. Says the Rebbe, this is exactly what makes Tzameach unique vis-a-vis fish. What is interesting about the trees is that they grow away from their source, meaning above the ground. The fish is always in the water. As soon as you take him out of the water, it dies. The Tzomeach, the tree, is always connected, but the tree also grows out of the ground, is not growing in the ground itself. So yes, the roots are connected, but the tree itself, grows out of the ground. Certainly trees which grow to be very tall do, and yet they always remain connected through the roots to their source, namely the ground and its power to generate growth. So what is this? What is all of this connected? What does this have to do with us? It's actually quite a bit. A human being is called Olam Katan, a mini world. The Talmud elaborates on this with several intriguing examples, that a human being is actually called a small world. Everything that God created in the world, says the Talmud, this is the Medrash actually, the Medrash Avot, the Rabbi Nassan. It says everything that God created in the world, He creates its likeness in human beings. He created forests in the world, and He created forests in human beings. That is a person's hair. He created scent in the world. He created scent in human beings. That is in their noses. Salt water in the world, salt water in human beings. That is tears in their eyes. Fresh water in the world, fresh water in human beings. That is a person's saliva. Wood in the world, wood in human beings. That is a person's bones. Now you have seen how everything that God created in the world, He has created its likeness in human beings. Now, here the Talmud listed dozens or so things, the comparison. But in the context of our conversation, we sum it up simply by saying that just as there is these four categories, Domem, Tzomeach, Chaim, and Daber, in the world, we have it also in the human being. But now we are going to take the step deeper. According to Hasidus, the four levels exist not only in a person's body, like how our hair is tzomeach and so on, but also in our soul. Within our soul, the character of the person also contains of the four categories. How so? Let's see what the Alter Rebbe says in Likutei Torah. Says the Alter Rebbe, just as a medaber, a human being, contains the other three levels of domain, tzameach, and chai on a physical level, so does the soul contain all four levels of domain, tzameach, chai, and medaber. And he explains, the most outward level of a soul's expression, the thought, speech, and action are domain. Our thoughts, our speech, our actions, all of them, they are inanimate objects. And explains, after all, once something has been thought, that same thought cannot grow into a different thought. If you think something, that thought is what you thought. That's it. It doesn't develop into something else. It's like an inanimate object. Once something has been said, those words cannot grow or change into something else. It is possible to think or say something else, but that is a new expression from the soul's essence. So the words you said, the words you thought, the thoughts you thought, every time you think something, it's a new creation of a new thought, a new word, it's a new inanimate object. So it doesn't change. The initial thought or speech remains the same. Now, emotions are tzomeach. Emotions are things that grow. Tzomeach is things that grow. This is the emotions. Why? Says the Alter Rebbe, because they grow. When you have an emotions, Emotions, as a child, children feel emotionally drawn to insignificant things. As we grow older, our emotions grow and mature with us. Even as adults, our emotions start off small and gradually develop into greater, more passionate feelings. So emotions is something that grows. Now, intellect is chai. Intellect is something that lives. What does that mean? As the verse says, wisdom gives life. So the intellect is something that lives. You can, like a living thing, has an independent existence, can move from one place to another place. The intellect also, you can think one thought, and then you can come up, think something completely opposite. You can think. The intellect, so it's not the same as what we said before. Thought is an inanimate object. Thought is you're thinking the words. Like 1 + 1 = 2, it's a thought. The idea can change. Idea, you can have other ideas. Some people like to watch a certain television channel, and others like other television channels. There's some people who like to watch channels that go against their feelings. So in the intellect, understanding process is something that you can. It's like a living thing. You can always change. You can always shift. The medaber is the level of keter. What does that mean? Medaber is the level of keter which is above intellect. The human being, it is about the keter represents something which is the very essence, which is above everything. It refers to the deepest, most essential aspect of the soul. It is the elusive you that you refer to when speaking of who you really are. So the very essence of the person is sometimes refers to also as the will of the person. When you have a will, it's above logic. It's something very deep. It's encompassing the person. That is refers to the keta. That is the medaber. Now, so obviously, a human being with its intellect is certainly above the is certainly above the emotions, but yet there's something interesting that when a person has an emotion, the emotion is very deeply connected to the root of the person, to the root of his essence, more so than the intellect. You see, why is that? Think about it. When you have a feeling towards something, the feelings that you feel is something so strongly connected, deeply connected with you. The understanding is something that you can shift. You're not so much connected with it. When you understand something, today you understand one thing, tomorrow somebody is going to explain you something else. You're going to explain it differently. Yesterday you were a Democrat, tomorrow you're going to become a Republican. It can change. But the emotions, a person has emotions, that affects him deeply, and it's much, much harder to change. In fact, he can shift his intellect also. There's an article about cognitive dissidence. So this is what we say, the emotions is like the tzomeach, like the things that grow, like a tree. A tree is so rooted into its ground, connected with its source. Same thing, emotions is very deeply connected with its source. So this article says as follows: consider the following hypothetical situation. John is an avid environmentalist. He's president of the environmental club at school, goes to climate change marches, and even owns an electric car. One day, John attends a lecture on the negative environmental effects of certain food products. To his dismay, John learns that coffee processing plants are responsible for water pollution that destroys ecosystems and shrinks biodiversity. His stomach drops. This means that he's part of the problem he's trying to resolve. This cannot be. John is an advocate for the environment, but a huge coffee drinker. Even he doesn't think he can give up his morning brew, let alone convince his friends to do the same. To get rid of the pit in his stomach and resolve his identity crisis, John quickly concludes that the speaker must not know what they are talking about. He also figures that even if drinking coffee isn't great for the environment, he has made so many other efforts to be sustainable that it must even out. With his mind temporarily put at ease, John stops by Starbucks after class for his afternoon pick-me-up. John's refusal to stop drinking coffee is a prime example of cognitive dissonance at work. To resolve the inconsistency between his environmental beliefs and his non-so-environmental actions, John dismisses the lecture as misinformation so that his identity isn't painfully compromised. So this is the idea what we're saying. That when you are emotionally connected to something, it may dominate even your thought process, the intellect. That's how the emotion is so strongly connected. Another place we can see how emotions are connected to the soul is temperament. Some people are naturally kind. Some people are naturally strict. It's very difficult for someone to act in a way that goes against their emotional nature. Even if their natural temperament is not necessarily appropriate for a given situation. Again, this is because emotions are deeply connected to our essence. The Rebbe writes, this is also why emotional tendencies are so immutable, so much so that it is very difficult to change them. It is very difficult for a person who is naturally kind to become disciplinarian, and vice versa. So now, understanding this will give us a way to understand what we asked in the beginning, why the Talmud talks about when Adam eats a sadeh, the man is like the tree in the field, wise man like a tree in the field, What kind of scholar are you supposed to learn with, from? What kind of scholar you shouldn't learn from? Why? So generally, we strive to operate and make our decisions with our intellectual, not with our intellect, not with our emotions. As we explained, emotions are of no use in almost any situation requiring thoughtful and balanced consideration. Emotions are stubborn, unreasonable, and hard to change. Intellect, on the other hand, intellect is high. It's alive. It's movable. It's adaptable. It's creative. However, there is advantage, as we said. There is an advantage in the emotions, and that is, remember, what is the advantage of emotions? It is how strongly it is rooted into the source, into the very soul. That's what the Talmud goes back and forth. You see, we said 3 points. Number one, we said a human being has intellectual faculties, which is called chai, and emotional faculties. It's called the tzameach, the things that grow. Number two, in general, a person's greatest quality is the intellect. However, for some reason, the Torah in our verse calls a person a tzameach. A person is a tree, an emotional being. Why is that? We can understand now the question of the Talmud. Why, the Talmud's question is, why does the Torah compare the human being to the tree? The human being to an emotional being. An emotional being, an animal is an emotional being. And that's what the Rebbe says. This is the Talmud's question. Is the tree of the field, is the tree of the field a person? It's true that a human being has certain aspects in which they can be similar to a tree, growth, emotions, but are they really the defining characteristic of a human being? Okay. And what is the answer? What is the answer that the Talmud gives? That yes. It depends what kind of human being we're talking about, what kind of scholar we're talking about. That if a scholar is a person who has refined his character, that means that he used his intellect to affect his emotions. The real superior quality of a human being is not so much that we have a mind, but rather that we use our mind to affect our emotions. To have a mind is great, but that's not the ultimate peak or the ultimate where a human being can reach. Anybody can think, anybody can come up with ideas. The real trick is, the real top that we can reach is to use our mind to change our emotions, to affect our emotions. And when you do that, you gain the advantage of the emotions over the mind. What is it? The advantage that the emotions, what the advantage of the emotion is that is very strongly rooted into its source, connected with the source, connected with the soul, just like the tree is rooted in the ground. The same thing when we use our mind to affect our emotions, what we study should be affected in our feelings. that ensures a lasting inspiration. That's what the Rebbe says here. The ultimate goal of a human's intellect is that it should affect their emotions, that their emotions should be dictated by intellect. This especially is the ultimate height of a human that a human being can reach. And that's the answer. To be fully human, the Talmud tells us, is for the mind to reign supreme over the heart, for the intellect to guide and even change our emotions. Now, is it possible to change emotions? It's almost impossible. But using the mind to get the right feelings, that's what the Torah says. In the Torah it says, "V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha," you should love God. And the famous question that is asked, how can you command someone to love? Love is a feeling. Love is an emotion. Is an emotion. How could you command someone to have an emotion? And the answer is, the command is to get to that point. The command is to use the intellect to understand this and to have an effect on emotions. And the truth of the matter is, we said before that you have people who are by nature kind. There are people who are by nature more strict. Can that be changed? After all, it's like a tree that is rooted into its place. And the answer is, it's very, very difficult. But guess what? You can also uproot a tree from one place and plant it in another place. It's not easy, but you can do it. That is something that also can be done. Even if a person has innate characteristics that goes in a certain direction, with hard work, that can also be changed. But that's already a scope, not the scope of this class. That goes beyond what we are talking about here. Here we're talking about something much, much easier. Something that a person should use the intellect that he has, the intellect that we possess, the Torah that we study. It should not remain as a plain intellect. We should attach ourselves to the intellect. We should connect to it. We should identify with what we read, what we study, to the point that it should change our feelings also. And that's what the Rebbe says over here. Those engaged in Torah study must remember that study alone is insufficient. After all, intellect is prone to change. And so there is no guarantee that after leaving the cocoon of study, they will remain connected to Torah. To ensure immutability, one must study Torah in a way that implants in their heart. That implants it in their heart. Then, regardless of the person's situation, he or she will remain forever connected to the source of life, the Torah mitzvahs. The Rebbe Rashab says this: true conviction is experienced emotionally. By contrast, intellect is subject to change. For the entire function of intellect is to break things down into many details, as that's the only way to properly understand something. Naturally, by breaking it down, it is weakened. Moreover, with multiplicity and nuances comes the opportunity to be convinced otherwise. That's the intellect. By contrast, emotions are the very nature of the soul, namely the expression of the soul's essence that lies beneath all other capacities. It is this core essence of the soul, higher than any specific expression, that dictates the way a person will viscerally feel. This essence is immutable, even if it may be indiscernible at times. Sometimes it's concealed, you don't see it, but it is still there. So basically, what we said, emotions touch deep into your true self. So our initial assumption was that if we become inspired and then the inspiration faded, that is a sign that the inspiration was a charade all along. But really, the opposite is true. The emotion was real. It was a real reflection of our etzem hanefesh, the very essence of the soul. The fact that it seems like it's gone, that is a charade. That is the answer with the first question we began. You get excited, you get inspired, and then it's gone. Doesn't mean it's not real. That emotion was real. Obviously, we're talking about the emotion that is a positive emotions. There's certain other emotions that are not so positive. That is why we need to have a mentor. That is why we need to have guidance. Talk to a rabbi, talk to a person you trust, to feel and to see how the inspirations that you have should be seized upon, and you should use the intellect to make it something that lasts, that's not gone for, and it's not a temporary thing. And here's a story. The Hasidim in Lubavitch would customarily wear long jackets. One Hasid, however, wore a short jacket when he was in Moscow on business, and changed into the long jacket when he returned home to Lubavitch. So once, before entering into a private audience with the Rebbe, Rabbi Shmuel of Lubavitch, he was the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Hasidim deliberated the Chassid deliberated, said, why should I wear a long jacket for my private audience with the Rebbe? The Rebbe knows who I am. Why try to fool him? I will be myself. I will wear my short jacket. So thus the Chassid enters the Rebbe's study wearing a short jacket. Why are you wearing a short jacket? The Rebbe asked. The Chassid was shocked. He explained, honestly, Rebbe, I did not want to fool you. Fool me? The Rebbe asked. Until now, I thought you were a chassid trying to fool the business world. Now I see you're a businessman trying to fool the chassidim. So what is it? Yes, of course. Who was he fooling? There's another story with the Alter Rebbe once. There was this chassid, also something along these lines. It was a chassid that he was acting as if he's very pious, praying and covering his talus as if he's praying a long time. And some other Hasidim came to the Alter Rebbe and they told him, this Hasid, but who does he think he fools? We know he's not that. We know he's not that holy of a person who prays for hours. And so who does he think he fools? So the Alter Rebbe said, let him have the end, what the Talmud, what the Mishnah says about such people. They all got scared. They said, "What? we didn't mean the Rebbe to curse him like that." And they said, "The Rebbe, what do you mean?" So the Rebbe said, very simple. There is a Mishnah says about the laws of charity. You have to give to the poor people, and who you should give, and that a person should not act like he's poor in order to get from the community charity. And then the Mishnah says that if a person acts as if he's poor, then he shall not die out of old age until he becomes poor. If a person acts as if he is limping, he shall not die of his old age until he will actually become limping. Says the Alter Rebbe, the same thing as Chassid. We can say the same thing about spirituality. If a person acts as if he's pious, as if he's praying like a Chassid, let him not die until he truly becomes a Chassid. So if we do have an inspiration, don't allow people around you, the environment, the friends, society to laugh, to mock you and say, who do you think you're fooling? Because that inspiration comes from the heart, comes from the soul. The emotions is connected deeply to the soul. If you do have an inspiration, go for it. Go for it. Do what you need to do. Let people think, even let yourself think that you're fooling, that you're not real, but keep doing it anyway. Eventually, you will get there. And Bezat Hashem, this will allow us, by train, especially now, the month of Elul, as it says, the Rebbe says, in this month we should increase in Torah study, increase in giving tzedakah, increase in prayer. We also have, there's a custom from the Baal Shem Tov, that from tomorrow, Rosh Chodesh Elul, the first day of Elul, we say 3 additional chapters in the Tehillim, in the Psalms. Every day we say 3 other chapters, and we finish it by Yom Kippur, finish the entire book of Psalms. So, we should all have a ksiva v'chasima tova, a gute gebenchte Jahr for all of us, and all Am Yisrael should have peace in the world, and Mashiach should come very soon. Amen. For joining. Thank you, Rabbi Cohen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Cohen.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
It was a beautiful class.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good night.